Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Football Experience, where me and Caleb will be dissecting the juiciest news that was occurring over the weekend while we were away. And you know what? Before we get into that, how are you? How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. It was good. It was good to not have much football to watch, and it coincided with the weekend that the match play for the golf. It's the only tournament they do where they actually play against each other in like a bracket sort of thing, and work their way up to like a final at the end. It's over 5 days, and it was very good to watch. And my boy Jason Day, he's a little bit back, and the Masters is 2 weeks away, so very exciting. It's a pity that we couldn't have international weekend. When just a warning for any of our listeners, I might not watch as much football that Masters weekend as I normally would, because I will definitely have the Masters on.
So Caleb's corner is going to be a little bit shorter in the future.
Well, yeah, but it might be overtaken by Masters talk. So
Hey,
I might just talk a bit about the golf.
Speaking of golf, I don't know too much about it. Like, I know like PGA is like the main association or whatever. But like, haven't Saudi Arabia or Emirates started their own one, like Live Golf or something like that?
Saudi Arabia have started the Live tour, and players have gone over and defected to that. So the tournament that I just watched the match play was a PGA event. But what's exciting about the Masters is that those guys who went over to Live, who are good enough, will qualify for the Masters, and we'll have all of them playing against each other again. And I think there's a bit less ill feeling than what was initially when they broke away, but there's still a bit of ill feeling there. The thing that I really want to see is, I don't know if they'll do it. It might be too controversial, but I hope that they pair Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson in a grouping together, because like Tiger's obviously the face of the PGA Tour, and Phil went over and defected to the Live Tour. I think that'd be awesome if they put those two in a group together.
Wait, so is the Masters isn't run by PGA? It's run by another
Masters,
organization.
yeah, it's its own thing. I don't know who it's run by. Probably just the Augusta National Country Club. You've got to watch a little bit of it just for the course. It's always so green, and it's just so lovely, and it's the most beautiful sight. I think it is just, it's an awesome tournament. But so many storylines. I can't wait.
But you know what?
2 weeks away.
You know what? That sort of like leads me on to like, okay, so there's actually, I guess, precedent there for breakaway organizations or breakaway leagues. And we have it, for instance, with boxing. Like, you have the WBC.
I think you have five different belts.
Yeah, the WBBF or something like that. Like, you have, like, when they all have, like, so you can have, like, 5 world heavyweight champions. For boxing, though, I feel like it should be just one unified world body, similar to a FIFA. But at the same time, I don't know. At the same time, I don't like the idea of having... I like the idea, but I also don't like the idea of having one body just running the show and having no one to answer to and having no competition. And like we've seen with FIFA, how corruption ekes into it.
I feel you totally on that, and I think the only disappointing thing is that when that happens, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong that happens, because there's reasons and whatever, but when that does happen, like, the talent gets separated then. My thing is, I always want to see all the best talent all playing together. That's why I'm kind of a fan for any proposed Super League in the future. So,
well, that's why I guess a lot of fight fans that love boxing, like for instance, now we have the whole debacle with Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, where they just can't agree on a fight, because I think Usyk is the world champion of one organization, Tyson is of another organization, and then like they just can't come to an agreement because they have their own individual promoters, and they're not governed by one world body. but then you contrast that with, for instance, UFC. I know that there's oh crap, what's the other one? No, I can't remember.
This is your jam, man.
No, I know, but like it's just it's just escaping my head. But for UFC, it basically like has, I'd say, like 90% or 95% of the best fighters. And man, I can't believe I don't. It's going to bother me. It's going to come to me later in the pod, like the competing organization to the UFC. But a lot of fight fans have been moving over to the UFC because you get your, first versus fourth, fourth versus second, fifth versus third, and etc. You get these fights made. Very rarely do you have fighters that are like not wanting, like they might not want to fight, but it's like, okay, well, you're stuck in a contract. You can't leave to another organization, and unless you fight, like you either fight or you retire, and that's it. Like you can't even move over to boxing. That's how the contracts are set up. Like unless you get the green light from the UFC, you can't even move over to boxing, and something like that should be, for instance, introduced to boxing. Yeah. So what do you think about that, for instance, where like you will actually get these fights made? Like we should have seen Tyson Fury versus AJ, but we haven't seen it yet.
Oh man, what's new with boxing, man? Like I don't know.
Pacquiao Mayweather. That should have happened 5 years before
in my
it
lifetime,
happened.
the best have never wanted to fight each other until it's too late. They're all into self-preservation. And honestly, I don't blame him because it's actually dangerous. It's physically dangerous fighting. So if you want to preserve yourself, like, and still make a shitload of money along the way, then fair enough. But it's not great for the competition of the sport. But look, like you said, I think you just going through that whole thing just shows why there's no way to say why it's right or wrong. I think for our viewing pleasure, we would prefer to see all the best playing against each other and having to, or in this instance, having to fight each other. But at the same time, you don't want to see people locked into those crazy contracts that you're talking about where you can't really, you're just locked in, especially in fightings. It's a moral one, fought with it, especially through the Live versus PGA sort of thing. And I guess the World Cup that we've had this year, or late last year, so yeah. I don't know how we got here, but
I don't know. Well, it's sort of like with golf, how they had its own breakaway league with Live Golf. Before I continue on with that, Bellator, that's the main one to UFC.
Okay, you got it.
But again, UFC, like I said, has 90 to 95% of like the world's best fighters, pretty much. But yeah, like it was pretty much to do with like Live Golf having a breakaway league, and I guess we're seeing that sort of with the European Super League, where it's its own breakaway European competition. They did do it wrong because they're trying to get these teams to play in their own separate competition rather than, at least originally, rather than within their league and the European Super League. And I personally think that it's good to have another competing force and not just have UEFA run everything over in Europe. And it was pretty much competition to UEFA. But originally it was competition to UEFA and every country's league.
Maybe, but
it was because they were going to leave. For instance, they were going to leave the Premier League. Like you weren't going to play in your own in La Liga, Premier League, and so on. So
I would like to see that. Open the Premier League up. Let someone else win it, and let's get the best competing against each other week in, week out, and see who the best really is. Because you know my thoughts on, while the Champions League's so exciting, it doesn't always give us the truest winner. So I think a league format where you're playing each other week in, week out. I mean, Europe's easy enough to get around now. So
yeah.
Anyway, I've done my views on this, but I think the common theme that you see with these breakaway things is that sort of angry initial reaction, which I always think is just so over the top when I've seen it with Super League and with Live. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. You people are treating this way too seriously, and like, I think it shows weakness on behalf of those who are emotionally reacting because they're like, "Oh, I'm threatened," and it's like, well, if you're threatened, then you know that you should be competed with if that makes sense. Like if you actually feel the threat and you're not that assured in your position, it's probably a good thing, really.
Yeah, because we can essentially agree that what the current setup is, it's essentially a monopoly by UEFA.
Well, by anyone who can get a monopoly is getting a monopoly. It
Yeah.
trickles all the way down. I mean, you even look at the big clubs, especially outside the Premier League, with money divvied up how it is outside of there. And I guess to compete with the Premier League, and this whole thing was probably to compete with the Premier League, but outside of it, you have to have one or two big clubs per country, and that's about all you can have. Whereas it feels like England can have 5 or 6. It's because of the money.
Yeah, true. Although
Anyway, we digress.
we
I think
digress.
something really, really big happened over the weekend, and it was not football related.
Well, I was actually going to have a little dig at Tottenham, but
We're going to start with Tottenham.
what's the non-football related?
Well, it wasn't on the pitch. On the pitch,
Off the pitch, but it is football
off
related.
the pitch, yes.
I was gonna ask a question: is Tottenham really a big club though? And
Got the stadium.
you can have your big stadium. I don't care. But yeah, one of them I think we expected. The other off the pitch big news. I think that one was a bit of a shock. And which one do you want to start with?
Oh, the Nagelsmaan one. I can't believe it. I actually can't believe they've chosen to sack Nagelsmaan. All right, the first question I have: do you think? This is going to come back and bite me on the ass because I'm asking you in that tone, But do you think Tuchel is worth all of it? Because let's not forget they paid 25 million euros to get Nagelsmann out of his contract, and they have him on an 8 million euro a year, 5-year contract. So they're still paying the rest of that until he finds another job. That's a lot of money to spend on him. He's only 35, and he's already an elite European manager, and you've tossed all that out the window to go and get Thomas Tuchel.
And not just that, you're getting him not even mid-season, you're getting him like 3/4 of the season through.
Well, if your ambition is to win the trophy with the big ears, he has previous in doing that, coming in.
Yeah, but he came in earlier. He came in in January
earlier,
or something.
It is a tricky one. Now he's got to get it ready for the biggest test maybe in European football with Manchester City. And maybe the guy who's in charge of Manchester City you would throw everything out the window for, but I don't know. Do you think Tuchel's worth all of that?
You know what? If they can now beat Manchester City.
Well, of course, it's results based now, and that's why I could look forward.
No, but
at the end of all of this. But I want to get something said before we see the results.
Oh, it's a really difficult one because like Nagelsmann's sort of been sort of on the Robert Kovac path.
No, don't put those two in the same.
No. I'm not. No. I'm saying in regards to results. I know Kovac sort of lost the dressing room, but he sort of he lost it because he was trying to also transition from like the older players to the newer generation. So he sort of lost the dressing room because of that as well. But it reminds me similarly to that where like Kovac was struggling in the league. He was doing what you would expect Bayern to do in the Champions League of getting at least to like the quarters or like getting out of the group.
Except for the year we knocked him out in the round of 16 when we won it.
Yeah, but then for instance, last year Nagelsmann got knocked out in the quarterfinals. So like he had like a year and then
against Villarreal, which is the kicker. Quarters is like okay, your first try, you're a young manager. But Villarreal is a bad.
Yeah, exactly. So like it smells similar, I suppose.
But But did we not? Okay, there's 2 points from what you've said. The first point is the one you finished on. Did we not see signs of progression from Nagelsmann in the round of 16 time? Let's not forget, this team in the Champions League have been the most impressive team in the Champions League this season, I'd say. Maybe apart from Napoli, but Bayern have been tested every part of the way. They had to come out of a group with Barcelona and Inter in it, and then they had to come through PSG in the round of 16. I don't think you're going to get it tougher. And if they come through Man City, this would rival Real Madrid's path to the final last season. Maybe even beat it for the group stage included. So, and Nagelsmann was killing it in there.
Yeah,
And
and
they've made
that's why
easy
it's
work. They
such
made
a
easy work of all of that.
that's why it's such a shock that like they did that because like yeah, you look at who they had. Did they go 6 wins in the group as well?
I believe they did.
Yeah. So and then they went 2 wins. Like they won both legs against
Yeah,
PSG as well.
both legs.
Um, it's only the only thing that's really sort of leading me as to the why. And he didn't lose the dressing room either, because like I read that apparently there's quite a lot of players that were actually against the sacking.
That is interesting because that was my next point. Because when you were comparing him to Robert Kovac, it made me
Kovac
think.
lost the dressing room.
Yeah, it made me think. Well, is this dressing room there to be had? Is it too loyal to the previous regime? Well, that's dating back to Flick, and that's. I guess he'd be working with a lot of those players in the Germany setup. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Is that dressing room easily lost? Is it like, and if it is, who comes in? Does Tuchel get that dressing room on side? I.e., is he worth it? Because
Yeah.
that squad is good enough to win the Champions League this season.
But like the notion is that he was getting too nosy with a reporter and too close to a reporter. That the
Nagelsmann.
that the Bayern hierarchy didn't like.
Yeah, their excuses were odd. I
Yeah,
can't remember them, but they were quite flimsy.
it's
I was like, what does that even mean? Like, how you're not justifying this at all?
yeah, it actually really is like an odd sacking.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a
but
big fish loose now.
and
But it was honestly very shocking news because there was no inkling. There was nothing.
yeah, and
Whereas
because
the other one was so
the other one
obvious.
was it was the writing. The writing was on the wall, pretty much.
Yeah, Conte put it up there. Sack me.
That one wasn't a shock at all. But you know, it's interesting how things turn around so quickly. Like when Conte was originally brought in, for instance, Man United was struggling, and then like you had a lot of Man United people saying, "Oh, why didn't we go for Conte? Like we should have got him in, this that." Then a lot of people were also saying like, "Oh, now that Tottenham have the personnel to challenge for the league, like at least like for instance like with Kane and Son, now they've got an elite manager that's going to take them to the next level." And it's just been the complete opposite. Like they're playing worse football, they're getting worse results, and yeah, like they've actually regressed under Conte. And like a lot of people were obviously comparing it to, for instance, Arteta, who at the time also was struggling, and he's turned things around. But the elite manager Conte at Tottenham couldn't turn things around.
We already asked that question, and we'll be interested to see if and when he does come back, is he still elite? That's the question I want to see, because what I saw from Tottenham, even though, because I think you made the point last pod that you put it down to Arsenal bottling it down the stretch last season, why Tottenham made it.
I'd say so.
Yeah, and I would agree that was probably more of the reason why they made it, as well as the great play of Son. And Kane came into good form at the end of the season, and that's what it's all built on. And him not having Son this season's killed him, but he hasn't adapted at all. And elite managers do adapt, and they do make that squad work. And even if they're getting the same results as they've gotten, because let's not forget they're still in fourth place. They can be overtaken, I know, but they're still in fourth place this season, which is about on par for Tottenham. But even if they were in exactly the same place and had exactly the same results, but they looked like Brighton, for example, then people wouldn't be on Conte's back. People would be like, this team is working towards something, it's building towards something. It doesn't quite have the consistency there yet, and then I think more people would turn their attention to where problems really lie in terms of the heart of that defense, and we'll probably address that when we go through our next section about ideal signings for clubs. But with Conte being in charge, he takes all the attention away, which is obviously a good managerial trait because he has a big enough personality to do that. But while he's been doing that, he hasn't addressed the problems, and then he's been very outward and in airing his dissatisfaction, and he just never wanted to be there from the start. It never felt like so. Let's see if and when he comes back, does he want to be at the next place, and let's see how good his team is on the pitch. Because yeah, I'm not. I brought it up last pod, but this could be his Mourinho at United moment, where it just shatters the glass a little bit. It's like, oh, are you a little bit past it now? But having said that, Carlo Ancelotti won another Champions League last season, and he was managing at Everton like a season before that. So crazy.
But the question I have then is it actually down to the mentality of the club? Because they've brought in, like, for instance, the last two managers that they've had with Mourinho and Conte, like, serial winners. I know Mourinho, like, he's sort of probably been on the downhill trajectory. A lot of people would say he's lost his shine ever since he left Madrid, I suppose, and went to United.
No, he had that second Chelsea stint. He had a good team the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And then they sort of died after they won the title. But that title-winning team was exceptional, and the team before that made the semis of the Champions League. So, but then that's why I say United for me.
Yeah, but the question is, like, okay, so Mourinho couldn't get pretty much this exact team, like, to win. He was sacked just before a cup final as well. I know it was the Carabao Cup.
I was going to bring that up. That's crazy.
But that's then the question. Like, if you want any manager to take the team for a one-off game, Mourinho's probably the first one that pops into your head.
Honestly, the thing I think is, like, and it might address is the club's mentality the problem? The only thing I can think of why you would do that is because you're petrified at the sort of how to say this, like the validation it would give Mourinho from that point, because you don't want him bidding in the press conferences with a trophy behind him, their first one in 15 or so years, because then the fans will be more inclined to believe the guy who brought in the trophy. So the only thing I can think is they did not want to give him the chance to have a trophy behind him when he goes out, and so they axed him there. Like, so, otherwise, why would you do that?
Yeah, it's that one was nuts to me. So do you think it's then Daniel Levy? And you know what? Mourinho was actually pretty good at United as well. Didn't he win an FA Cup and a Europa League?
Yeah.
So
and finished second and claimed it was his greatest achievement in management.
Looking back with that team of players,
that team never played good football. All they got is Solskjaer finished second as well.
Yeah.
So, and I would argue that the Solskjaer team played better than the Mourinho team.
But even so, he's still won them 2 titles as well.
And he, like Conte, got a very good tune out of Son and Kane as well. So I'm torn between this one, because I think in a lot of ways Tottenham did the right thing in going for those managers when they had these 2 superstars of the game in their primes in Son and Kane, and it just hasn't worked out, because I don't know. Honestly, when we talk about Tottenham, when you talk about the roots of the problem, I don't know. Maybe
is it Daniel Levy? Because he's been the one constant over the past 20 years.
Maybe, but I don't know. I don't know. Apart from All or Nothing, the one they did with Mourinho a few seasons ago, I don't know the goings on, the power dynamic there. And from what I got from that, he was fine. Levy looks like a kind of, I don't know, an easy guy to work for because he seems very passive.
Someone mentioned, for instance, um, they apparently were going for Jack Grealish before he had that amazing season with Aston Villa, and Aston Villa were asking for. I'm not sure if it was just before that season or if maybe it was a season before that, but Aston Villa were asking for 25 mil and Tottenham were offering 20 mil, and they could have had someone like Jack Grealish on their books for if they just went 5 mil more.
Yeah, and I'm sure football's littered with stories like that, but I don't know. This is, and like I was going to say, I think this is just why I'm torn because, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with the management choices for those players, and they have spent money. I know that, and they've been on par because they are the sixth. They're like, I don't think this is like the discussion with leagues when it's always the French league is always the fifth best league. Tottenham are always the sixth best team. Like they can finish fourth, they can finish wherever. But I would say you would always put them behind all the other five teams in terms of maybe Arsenal had a dodgy stretch for a little bit, but even in terms of size, like I think they'd still be pretty comparable. So I think, especially with the history behind, like when I was growing up, Tottenham were never considered in the Big Six. So I actually think they've done quite well to even like let everyone know and maybe fool everyone a little bit that they are a Big Six club. You know, with the stadium, with the Champions League final appearance, a couple of close runs in the Premier League. I don't know. I think like they've done a good job just to be here because, like you and me, when we were watching the Premier League back in 05 to 010 range, Tottenham weren't in that category with the Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United, and it's not like they've been Manchester City and had this massive injection from Abu Dhabi. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're overblowing this thing. Maybe Tottenham are where they should be. Maybe they do it a little bit better than they should be, and maybe we should be taking our hats off to Levy and everyone who's managing down there because they've been very competitive, had a very good last 10 years, and it's not bad that they're maybe having this drama when they sit fourth in the table and are very much in with a shout of being in the Champions League. So
see that?
Yeah, I don't know. Counter narrative.
No, see, that's the thing. Like under Redknapp, that's when they started getting into the top four and started seeing some success. But I don't think the fans were this disillusioned by where they should be back then. I think it was during that Poch era where they challenged Leicester. They got obviously to the finals. They beat Man City in the quarters as well. Was it 2 years in a row that they beat them in the Champions League? It was
just the one. That epic with the VAR drama.
Yeah. I think they might have. No, I think it was toward Liverpool the year before. But regardless, but they were there, like competing with City, and that's it's sort of similar to, for instance, with Arsenal, like where I was saying that their trajectory, like they are way ahead of schedule based on this season. I think everyone was saying this season they need to get top four, like third, ideally, to show progression, but top four. And then next season be challenging or thereabouts for the title. So like, yeah, they're ahead of schedule. So is this maybe, like, since you brought up the fact that, like during our time, like that 2000s period up until when Harry Redknapp started getting them into the top four, they were never considered a big club really, or part of that big four, big five, big six.
Yeah, they were probably the best of the rest.
Yeah, so do you think that maybe when Levy came in, he's like, okay, this is our 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plan to get us here without Abu Dhabi money, for instance, where you can get it done within like 3 to 5 years. So, and do you think that they were maybe ahead of schedule? Like Poch got them ahead of schedule, and that sort of made fans disillusioned of where they should be.
Yeah, maybe you could be a victim of your own success, and you get accustomed to a certain standard of living, one might say. But I don't know. Maybe just to finish the Tottenham point, because I think your question was pretty much echoing what I was saying with the counter narrative point, where maybe Levy should really be praised. And
Yeah, in
they have
one view,
they have one of the nicest stadiums in the world. They tried to build it on the same land as White Hart Lane, which I think, for superstitious voodoo reasons, is always a good thing when you have a spiritual home. So they did that right as well. They've managed to keep hold of Harry Kane for this long. So yeah, there's definitely a counter narrative that they've, and then that maybe with the Premier League being a little bit weak around that time, with them challenging for those titles, yeah, maybe a bit of disillusionment, maybe a bit of delusionment of where they might actually be when other teams started getting good again. But I do want to finish, because if we put a microscope on it a little bit more and look into it just within the 10 years, and maybe people might ask the question, why does this team why is this team not like those Pochettino teams? The big difference for me is Alderweireld and Vertonghen are no longer at the club. And when they were at the club around that time, they were peak, probably world-class defenders, both of them, to be fair. And they're both Belgian teammates, and they had that chemistry, and they just were week in, week out pretty much next to each other. So they had that solid base. And this team, for years now, ever since those guys haven't been at their peak, they've never had that base at the back, and we've never seen a solid Tottenham team. And even Antonio Conte hasn't been able to fix that, and they're as leaky as ever. So I think we have to look at personnel, and I think that's the main thing. The football reasons are always the most important thing to look at, because at the end of the day, the game is played on the pitch, and that's what determines where you'll finish up in the table, and that's the most important thing for a club like Tottenham. So yeah, the processes and the football is just not quite right, and the personnel is just not quite right, and they've never addressed that. And I think that's why they're struggling, and that's why, if they do finish top four this year, it won't be because they're a team who look on the up. It will just be because others faltered around them.
I'm not even sure they're going to... Now, I'm not even sure they're going to finish top four. I think this has completely opened the door for the other teams to hop onto it. The door's been
wide open all season.
No, but like this...
Who wants it?
I think the door was maybe like half open, but I think now it's wide open, especially because Mason Ryan is, and
Ryan Mason.
Ryan, yeah. Mason Ryan. Oh, he was a wrestler in the WWE, I think. Absolute beast of a guy. Sort of like a Batista mold, like Batista 2.0.
I'd love to see him in charge of Spurs till the end of the season.
He'll probably scare them into playing well. So yeah, and Conte's second in charge. What's his name? Stellini. Yeah, I think they're now at the helm. I'm not sure who's one and two, who's one and who's two. I think
Stellini's number one.
Yeah. So I'm not sure with that if they're gonna necessarily get that new manager bounce. However, it's to bring us full circle back to the Nagelsmann sacking. He's apparently target number one on the rumour mill for Tottenham to go for.
He should be, but I don't think he should go to Tottenham if I was Julian Nagelsmann.
At least not yet. Maybe wait and see what happens in the summer with Kane.
Yeah, just wait and see. I think there'll be other jobs that he could go for, and I'd be interested to see where he'd want to go. And I just think he should take the rest of the season off if Bayern are going to pay him. why wouldn't you? Go relax, go to New York like Pep, go and do whatever you want for as long as you want.
You know what though? This could also put Graham Potter's job in jeopardy as well.
Of course, I think Chelsea should be looking at Nagelsmann.
Yeah.
And I'd feel for Potter, but objectively, I think Nagelsmann's a better manager than Potter, especially given the age and the fact that I think he's already better than Potter. So, but give him some time to lick his wounds, to learn his lessons from Bayern, because let's not forget, I in particular was quite critical of him in his time at Bayern for a lot of it. But I still understand. I think I was marking him as harshly as any elite manager that I would normally mark, and that's not factoring in the fact that the guy's 35. Like he's still younger than a few of his players. If he went to Chelsea, he'd be younger than Thiago Silva, for example. So, man, he's got a long career ahead of him. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. Be interesting to see if management ever can have another dynastic manager like Arsene Wenger, like Alex Ferguson, because you'd say he would have had a chance, especially at Bayern. I don't know. I don't think it'll ever get to the 27 years that Ferguson did, but maybe 10 or so, maybe 8 or so. I think that'd be a long run today. Well, I guess Pep and Klopp are doing it at the moment.
Yeah, they've been there for 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I don't know. Be interested to see what happens with there, but yeah, I am interested to see what happens with Nuggets, but I would wait, and there'll be a lot of clubs I think in for him in the summer, maybe earlier.
Do you think that maybe Oliver Kahn and Rummenigge were listening to your criticism of Nagelsmann on this pod? So you're the one that got him sacked.
They drew the wrong conclusion. Even Palace drew the wrong conclusion with my criticism of Vieira. I don't know if Vieira should have gone, and I definitely don't think Nagelsmann should have gone.
Yeah, the Nagels one especially. Like Vieira, I think that one's fair enough because he wasn't even getting results.
Maybe if he had a big say in recruitment, because they never got any sort of midfield creator.
Yeah,
it always showed when they played.
Well, I think we said it, like they never got a replacement for Gallagher, and he was so important to the way they played. And yeah, they never got anyone in for him. But like, yeah, the Nagelsmann one is actually bewildering, like we said, because he had a really tough group stage, finished 6 for 6, if we're not mistaken, in the group stages of Champions League. And beat PSG in both legs. Like, wasn't like a draw and a win or like a loss and then a big win at home. It's only really the league form that's sort of been, I wouldn't say disappointing, but maybe a little bit.
Leave this because we're gonna talk about all of this because there's a huge match after. When we come back to club football, straight off the bat.
Yeah, but I just want to say, like, the league form by Bayern standards has probably been a little bit flat.
Yeah, but they're still comfortably the best team in Germany.
Yeah,
I know that they're not on the table.
Not points wise.
I mean, Dortmund have put together a good. Well, look, I'm already.
Like we'll get into that. We're obviously going to get into that in the next pod, but that's all I wanted to say on that. Like, And does that, I guess, lead us to a little bit of international talk before we get into our main segment?
Yeah, maybe we'll touch a little bit. Did you watch England, Italy?
I did watch England, Italy.
Dude, England looked awesome the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
How good did they?
I was going to say that.
Italy! Oh my god! Dude, I'm hoping, and obviously this is draw permitting and everything, but I'm hoping, and this is like a year and a half away from the tournament, but England, France, they are the two powerhouses in Europe at the moment for me. I don't think anyone else really touches them.
I don't know, man.
So.
Not with not that second half that England put in.
But it was away in Italy. Like, you've got to expect a response.
I still don't. I'm still not convinced. And the way that Gareth Southgate is picking players, where he's not picking them based on club form, no. I'm not on that train.
Who's your gripe with then?
Well, for instance, like how's Calvin Phillips? He's not getting any game time for City, and yet he's still being picked for the England squad.
Who plays then for this game in particular?
I don't know who's really coming to mind straight away, but like But how do, and then also Harry Maguire as well. He's another one. He's the obvious one, I guess. Um, it's just he's picking players obviously that he trusts, but then how can players like how do they get into the team at all when like they're playing really well for their club, they're playing week in week out for their club, and they're still not getting picked. Like Ivan Toney's not getting picked. Tamori's not getting picked. Ben White's not
Tony's
getting
not
picked.
getting picked because Harry Kane's there, man. And Ben White had to leave the World Cup camp because he had a falling out with a few teammates or whatever it was.
We still don't know the story there, but and also right back isn't really a position of concern considering they have Trent, Reece James, and Walker.
They got James. They got
exactly
Walker,
like Trent can't and Trippier. So like they have four that are ahead of Ben White, and that are actually.
I would have thought that Ben White would be more of a Southgate style right back, but I just don't think he clicks with the rest of the guys. And I don't know from the outside. I don't want to speak too much on Benjamin White's personality. Yes. But yeah, he doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't seem like. This could be a good thing and a bad thing, but he's not a football lad, so to speak. And a lot of those other guys would. Yeah, and a lot of those other guys would be football lads, I'd say, like Grealish, Rice, Calvin Phillips. They're all. So I think it's. I don't know. Without knowing the ins and outs, I think it's just kind of easy to see why they don't click. And to the point, Southgate has to make it click. It's not all about the club form, and I think he falls back on having some mainstays. He falls back on having some bedrock. Whether we think it's right or wrong, we don't. I think we agree that it's not the right personnel in goal. I think we agree it's. I don't know. Looking at the centre back options, maybe it is the right centre backs to lean on because they probably are your best two choices. It'll be interesting to see who comes through, but. No, I got to disagree. I know they come under pressure in the second half. Italy got it right because Italy got it so wrong with the selection in the first half. Verratti wears the armband. He doesn't even need to be playing in this game. I have no idea how Brian Cristante is not playing in this game. I have no idea.
Or even our boy, Tonali.
And Tonali, I know. And Tonali hasn't had a great season, and maybe that's Mancini picking. Well, it can't be Mancini picking on form because Jorginho's a second choice, and Verratti has been diabolical at PSG. So, yeah, once they got some physicality into that midfield, Italy could actually do something. But yeah, Jude was running the show in the first half, and man, England have such a good player there. They have Bukayo Saka, they have Harry Kane, they have Jack Grealish in good form, and then
but just
not Jack Grealish, could be Phil Foden. And like the midfield with Rice mopping everything up. And to the point, I just want to finish on this. The Calvin Phillips selection I thought was okay because I think I can understand that going away to Italy, going away to Naples, you want to put in a good defensive performance. I agree. I think after seeing him, he probably wasn't up to pace, but I understand the decision going in there and why Southgate wants to lean on that good defensive core, especially when you've got that attacking talent that I just mentioned going forward. And boy, oh boy, did they show that in the first 20 minutes especially.
But I just wanted to butt in there with Ivan Toney because you sort of cut me off there and you said, Harry Kane's there. But, like, Ivan Toney's not even making the squad. Like, why isn't he back up to Harry Kane?
He made this squad, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know if he did.
Even though he has his potential suspension looming for the betting breaches.
Let me just double check that he made the squad.
I think that was the big talk, and it was like, will he, won't he, because of what could be looming ahead, but eventually Southgate did pick him. I don't think he picked Trent for this one.
He didn't pick Rashford.
But yeah,
that's a big talking point.
And well, yeah, we've got to say that they don't even have Rashford for this game. Listen to the names we're mentioning. These are some of the best young players in the world in all four of those attacking positions.
Okay, Tony has been picked for the squad, so
I am pretty excited about England. And I am also quite excited about France. So they're the two.
France, yes.
Well, France were at home against the Netherlands and they scored 2 in the first. The Netherlands were diabolical, giving goals away. But Antoine Griezmann and Kylian Mbappe are 2 of the best players in the world, and they were linking up. And Rabiot all of a sudden is a really good central midfielder after not for years of flattering to deceive. The defensive choices. Mike Mignon is finally in goal now, so they have a world-class goalkeeper. I don't know. The French look so strong. They always do.
And he saved the penalty as well. And we'll
Mike
say how
Mignon's a
Lloris couldn't
beast.
save a penalty to save his life.
Yeah, Mike Mignon's so good from penalties as well. So, yeah, I think we're looking at probably the finalists, and I've got to say, all round to your point, I'd say no, I can't say probably the finalists, but the 1 and 2 favourites going in, unless something drastic changes in the next 16 or so months. I'd say that those two.
I'm not convinced by England at all. I'm not on them.
Well,
I
who else do you
was
put in
on
that
them.
bracket then?
I just can't see England winning anything.
Your opinion? I think
That's my
I think
opinion.
it's
I'm
a bit
entitled to
strong
it.
for the. Yeah, I think it's a bit strong for the team who are the second best team in Europe at the moment.
I think they're a bit Spursy.
Bit Spursy.
Bit
Because
Spursy.
Spurs have a front four like that. Like Bukayo Saka, Marcus Rashford.
No, like I think
Jude
I think
Bellingham.
just mentality wise, I think and the manager just I don't think the manager's up to par.
No, I disagree. Who's a better manager for international football? And this is a guy who went stale. For me, the big thing for Gareth Southgate, he went stale with the 3 at the back. He accepted that the team looked stale. He changed it for the World Cup. And on another day, they would have gone through against France and maybe gone through to a final themselves. And this team is just looking... He listened to all that criticism. They got a back 4, and now they're playing with that fluid front 4 that sort of United play with. And I don't know, they just look so exciting going forward, especially. So dynamic, so much... France are the only team I think can hang with them physically. I don't think there's any other team in Europe that can hang.
See, like you're going back to your question about like what other manager could take over. The problem with international management is, especially for instance with England now, where I think England now want to focus on having an English manager. So like, who can take over that's English? That's the question. Luis Enrique, for instance, if they wanted to go for a Spanish manager, like a different...
Because he was fantastic at the World Cup and Spain couldn't even get past Morocco.
I think he could probably get more out of this team.
I disagree. I think any talk about Gareth Southgate at the moment, for me, I'm going to disagree with. But it's good. We disagree on something. We agree on a lot on this pod. I'm interested to see if we agree on... we'll go through this because we said that we were going to do this on the last pod. The signings for most of the major clubs around Europe. Was it one signing each? Now, did we come up with a rule? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so hang on, let me just before we get into that. Okay, so I think what I suggested was you wanted one signing for each top team, and I said yes, that one main signing, but you are allowed to have a backup. Like as an example, in using a real world example, Arsenal wanted Mudryk, but they had Trossard as a backup. They wanted Caicedo, and they had Jorginho as a backup. So similar to that sort of vein, where like if you can't get your main target, who's your backup? Or do they, for instance, just break the bank for one target?
Yeah,
because some of these I only did one.
Yeah, what I was going to ask is, can we double up on targets for clubs and have a sort of bidding war in the summer?
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I came across, like where for some clubs I've suggested the same player, because the reality of it is, like teams like, for instance, Man City and Real Madrid, they can compete financially against each other. Man United and Real Madrid, they can compete on especially now that Man United are actually playing well and getting results and have a new manager that it looks like they're going to stick with this manager rather than like a Ranić, because only coming in for 6 months. They can also compete on the prestige front. So like for some teams, I've suggested that they try and target the same player, whether they get them or not. And also with the with that signing thing, I originally suggested you can't go if, for instance, your main target is a midfielder. Your backup signing, if you can't get that midfielder, can't be like a defender or an attacker or a goalkeeper, for instance.
I think you could. I think you could change targets depending on the quality of players out there.
Well, not for our exercise.
Maybe a team might have a few different holes that they need to fill, or places
that's true.
And if the quality is vastly greater in a position that maybe we don't prioritize quite as much, then you've got to think about that, I guess. But it'll be interesting when we go through it case by case. I think we'll have more to say on each bit.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want to take a quick break and then we'll go through case by case?
Yeah.
Each club their one desired signing, I guess.
No, we'll take a quick break and then we'll get into this segment.
Oh, must pee.
And we are back. Caleb, you ready to get this show on the road?
Yeah, I'm ready to go, and I want to start with your favourite club, and I want to hear what you came up for this one, because this one I found quite difficult.
And I think that's another point that I want to make as well. Like, some teams might seem almost complete. So it's like, who can come in to like really who can actually fit into like maybe the system that can really like bring it to life and add more energy and whatnot. But with Arsenal, the position that I've gone for is essentially I know Xhaka's had a really good season.
Oh, did we pick the same? We picked the same position then.
Yeah, whether we pick the same player or not. Or players.
Come on. Did you have your head in the clouds? Did you dream big?
I did, but the reason why I went for Xhaka is because I know that he's having an amazing season, and credit to him, he's turned things around.
But you can't unsee the first 6 years of life.
Yeah, it's like but you know what though? We actually still don't have a backup to him. I think he's played pretty much like every single game, like including the Europa League games. Like, he hasn't really had a rest, and in some of the games in the previous couple of weeks, he's almost seemed around like the 70th minute. He's almost seemed like tired. I know he scored against Lisbon, and he also scored against who did we play last? It wasn't Fulham.
Palace, wasn't it?
Palace, yeah. He scored against Palace. Yeah. But yeah, he seemed a little bit leggy, and yeah, there just isn't anyone there for that position. So I've gone for the one that's, I guess, on like number one rumor mill, which is Declan Rice. I think he would be perfect.
Declan Rice.
I think he would be perfect for that position. He wouldn't need to move like cities either. And what seems to be like the transfer policy is that Arsenal are signing players that can play across multiple positions. So signing Declan Rice, he can also fill in for Partey as well. So he fills in those two slots. I know he offers something different to Partey, but so does Jorginho. And Jorginho was signed as, like, I guess, a backup to Partey. And also we have Lokonga there, who's like that understudy. Whether he becomes the player that he was expected to become, that's another question. But also my backup, if we can't get Rice, would be to go for Tonali.
Interesting. Tonali's a good one. I like that. He wasn't even on my list. I think Rice is pretty similar to Partey, to be quite honest. He might, I wouldn't say be an upgrade, but he is really good in there, and he's so young still.
But he could play box to box though.
He can. Can I see you a Declan Rice? Because the player that I put first on my list, especially if Arsenal were tough, because I think Arsenal, before making a big move, should almost wait until January next season. That's why I found Arsenal tough for me, because unless the right player is out there, and this is why I chose this guy as my number one, but unless they can get the right player, I think it'd be more... I would just sit on my kitty of cash and just have a look at how my team is doing next season. Because let's not forget, Arsenal are, I think, the youngest team in the Premier League.
And they're on second youngest, I think. But
second? Yeah, I always say youngest. I think you always correct me it's second. But
last year
they're
they
on
were
course
the
to win. They're on course to win the Premier League with that, in fact. So you got to think that this team is on an upward curve. And we got to see where they are next season, because if it's not the right player, do we need to bring anyone in for big money in the summer? So that's why I found Arsenal tough for me. But that's why ultimately I put Jude Bellingham as my number one target if I was Arsenal.
You went more ambitious than me.
Yeah, I know. If you win the title, if you have saved all that money from January that you didn't use on Caicedo and Mudryk and used it on Trossard and Jorginho, you've got to think Arsenal will have a kitty. They have Champions League football back. They have Premier League winning money. They have Premier League winning prestige. They have a team on an upward curve. And they add another 20-year-old who will join that upward curve. He's the right player for me. So if you're going to blow a lot of money in this summer, it better be on a Jude Bellingham. Or I love your point of a Declan Rice, who you might have convinced me might be more apt just because he can fill in for Partey. But Jude Bellingham is no doubt much better in the number 8 role. So it's an interesting one. But I think the fact that we've chosen those two players shows that I think it has to be the right player for Arsenal. Otherwise, why do it?
Yeah, you know what? My only counter to that, like, for instance, waiting till January, is that let's say we win the Premier League, and we pretty much do a Liverpool when what you guys did when you guys won the Premier League, but I think more so when you won the Champions League, you didn't bring in anyone new. So, like, you didn't build on the success of bringing in one or two more star players. So, I don't think that would set the right tone of winning the Premier League or even coming second, and you don't bring anyone in the summer.
No, not anyone.
Or a big name.
Because I'll give you some backup names, because Jude Bellingham was the only one, and I'll put Declan Rice in that bracket as well. The only one that I would be willing to go out and splash a shitload of money on to bring into Arsenal. Especially if that team, like I said, is still on the upward curve. But other players would be Ayhan Sanset from Bilbao, 22 years old, attacking midfielder for the Xhaka role. Much more prolific from midfield, even though Xhaka has been prolific this season. But he's still on that upward curve as well at 22. And one who maybe doesn't fit that, but maybe comes in and gives you a bit of steel for a Champions League campaign is maybe a Seiko Fofana from Lens, who is the captain there. Maybe a bit more defensive than Xhaka, although a bit box-to-box. But they're the type of players I'm looking at if it's not a Bellingham or a Rice. Players who come in, they bolster the squad, they give us options in a different department, they give us options to maybe play a different way. We know we've got a Champions League campaign coming up this season as well. So So if it's not the right player, it's players like that I'm bolstering in the squad over the summer.
Yeah.
So that's why they're not priority number one.
I do also think. I know. Like it was only for one position, but I think that a backup to Saka is needed, unless Marquinhos. I think he's doing pretty well at Norwich, but yeah, I think we need a backup to Saka. Balogun as well is doing really well at Reims. And Kedia has shown that he can fill in. I don't think you can exactly hang your hat on him, but so I'm not sure that we necessarily need like a striker that's like if it's number one priority. Otherwise, like I'd say like go for Osimhen. like,
oh yeah.
But
I didn't actually spoilers. I didn't put Osimhen on any list.
Really?
Maybe that's my hope of him not moving, but I didn't put him on any of my lists.
I had him on. I had him on a couple.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, for me, Rice or Tonali, I didn't go as ambitious as Bellingham just because, but look, see that's the thing. Rice has a year left on his contract. I'm not sure how long Bellingham has left, but I think they're both at least in the tabloids. They're both $100 million or euro or pound players. So you're pretty much. I'd say Bellingham's more. But you're both. But for both of them, I don't think for West Ham, considering he has a year left on his contract, I don't think you need to spend $100 million. You can probably go as high as 70 now, like this summer. But on Rice, but yeah, Bellingham, I'd say is definitely $100 million minimum.
Especially with the competition out there for. It should be competition for both, really.
Yeah, there is.
So who do you have?
Who's
this
next?
Is an interesting
Who's
one.
next?
City. We'll go through the Premier League table and we'll go to Manchester City. What was you thinking behind this one? I'm interested.
Well, I think it's the one glaring position that we've been looking at the whole season.
Left back.
Yep. I'll let you go first.
Well, you know who I've got for Man City.
I think you know who I've got.
I said this at the end of last season. I think it's Theo Hernandez for me.
I've got Theo as well.
Oh man, you've been listening to me. Yeah, and there's questions. This brings up questions of Milan that we'll probably get. But I wonder if you can guess the one who I had at second. Not the same position. This one might be really hard because you might not think that they need an upgrade, but I do think that they could do with an upgrade. And this is Manchester City we're talking about. So the fact that we say that they can get Theo Hernandez shows us that they're swimming in that kind of pool because he will demand a high fee. He's highly prized at AC Milan.
He's also like the captain or backup captain, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been captain a lot this season. I'll give you the hint. He also plays at AC Milan, this player that I think Manchester City could do with.
Lau.
No, I was going to put him on, but I don't think he's a Pep player. I don't think Pep wants to work with because he doesn't work against the ball. I don't think Pep loves that.
True.
So the other AC player, Blackfoot, part of that defensive unit.
What?
He's the big man between the sticks.
Oh, I was gonna go for the.
I have Magic Mike.
You're gonna replace Edison.
I think the upgrade from Edison to Mike Mignon is so much that I would be tempted to do it if I was Manchester City. Because I think Mike Mignon is nearly, if not as good with his feet as Edison, but he is twice the goalkeeper that Edison is at this moment. Now, Edison has been great for seasons, but this season and last season, I haven't been as convinced as I had previous seasons before that. And his distribution is still fantastic, but I don't rate his goalkeeping anymore. And I always love call me crazy, but I love a goalkeeper who can goalkeep. And that's probably the first thing I look at. So
this coming from a Liverpool fan who had to go through Mignolet and Karius.
Man, and they couldn't even do anything with their feet to justify. But yeah, I think it's gotten to the point with Edison that if a goalkeeper like Mike Mignon is a possibility, I'd probably try and do it.
I think to an extent it's fair, but I think the left back position is the more glaring one. I was going to say right back is also a pretty glaring one, but
did you come up with anyone at right back?
See,
I didn't get anyone on the list.
So that's the thing. I didn't really even think of right back because Walker's still there. If he can stay injury free, he's obviously your number one choice.
If he can keep his pants on as well.
that too. But you also have Cancelo. If he can, if he can screw his head back on, then he will be ample backup to Walker.
João Cancelo.
Here's the thing. Would he be first choice if you sign Theo at left back?
Well, I always said that ideally going into the season, Theo will be my left and João Cancelo will be my right back.
But so he wouldn't be first choice at left back. If Walker's fit and available, would he be first choice at right back? I don't think so.
I don't know. Pep has gone a little bit off even Walker this season as well. So, but the main question is, does Pep take Cancelo back? I don't know I don't know what happened in that relationship, so I don't know if that's even a possibility over the summer. So
that's another.
I agree.
Question.
I think the left back position is the most pressing, and I think given that Man City can spend a lot of money, and given that Theo Hernandez is at a club that potentially might not finish in the top 4 in Italy. My goodness, what an opportunity that may have presented itself. And I even thought if City really wanted to, they probably could have got Theo Hernandez over the summer after he's coming off winning the Serie A title. So yeah, Man City are just objectively a bigger draw than AC Milan nowadays. So that one's very, very possible. Should be likely. Is Theo Hernandez a Pep player? That's the question. I don't know. He is very off the cuff. He's a little João Cancelo-ish, but Pep did get a great season out of João Cancelo. But I don't think he's as petulant. It's that petulant Portuguese that comes out with João Cancelo. Maybe more a bit sulky. He's a big diver, Theo Hernandez. Oh, big diver. His diving is terrible, and that's got to be annoying if he does come to the Premier League. But
yeah, but they got.
Yeah, I think
so. They're gonna have 2 divers on that same wing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so I don't think that's necessarily a problem. Or like not if you're a City fan or whatever, but like, you know.
Yeah.
What team do you have next?
United.
Oh, I got them as well. See based on how they're playing, I think the most glaring position is centre forward. Do we agree on that, or do you have a different position?
I'm interested to see how you go with centre forward then, because I picked the same position, but then my justification won't involve me saying that I picked the same position.
I went with Harry Kane for centre forward, and I think that's pretty obvious. Like for why you'd go for Harry Kane, because he would be all right. Ten Haag bringing in Weghorst shows, I guess, how he wants to set up his team. And I think Harry Kane would be a massive upgrade on Weghorst. And he can actually chip in with goals as well. So not only can he do everything, yeah. Not only can he do everything with the ball, like in terms of link-up play that Weghorst can do, but he can also chip in with a goal or 2.
Okay, so there's questions off this. With this deal going through in the summer, does that mean you expect Manchester United to have been sold by then, so that they have a big injection of money?
I don't think they need. I don't think they need to be sold. Like they spent 100 mil on bloody Pogba like 2-3 seasons or 4 seasons ago or whatever it was.
That was a while ago.
It doesn't matter. Like
to your point,
they have the money.
Well, do they though? Because in January they made it very abundantly clear we are not going to spend a lot of money on getting reinforcements after they're having one of the best runs that they've had in years. And they still made it abundantly clear we're not spending this January. So
Well,
if the Glazers are still in charge, I don't know if they have the money to get a Harry Kane.
I think because
That's why
Kane is on
I
his
hesitate.
but Kane's on the last year of his contract. Like Tottenham are stuck between like a rock and a hard place. They either keep him for one more season, and I don't think he's the type of person to down tools. But they either keep him for one more season and risk losing him on
Mm.
a free.
Did you see the start of last season when his head was turned by City? He down tools for a good 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, all right, true, but even so, yeah, if if he
Next
doesn't sign a new contract, he's leaving on free.
next question: does going to Manchester United guarantee what he wants? Because we don't even know if Manchester United will finish above Tottenham this season. We expect they will. Let's be honest, but they're somewhat in a top four race themselves. They're not guaranteed trophies season on season. And for Harry Kane, I think for Harry Kane to leave, he kind of needs to be guaranteed trophies. Otherwise, why are you doing it? I mean, and yes, I think we agree United probably gives you a better chance than Tottenham. Um, so there's that. But I had another club for Harry Kane, and it's not in England.
Well,
I had Bayern Munich.
Well,
Well,
why are we skipping? You,
I'll
you,
ruin it.
you didn't even tell me who your Man United player is.
Okay, but last question with the Harry Kane thing before we get to mine. What happens to Marcus Rashford with this? Because he's been scoring a lot of goals, and I actually think a reason why he's been scoring a lot of goals is because United don't have a fixed number 9. And I think his production might go down with a fixed number 9, but on the flip side, it might stay exactly the same because Harry Kane is such a wonderful footballer that he's a great assist man as well. So
And why can't that develop into a Son Kane type of relationship?
I agree with that, but I'm just raising that there might also be a downside to Rashford's production with that. That's all I'm saying. But I think ultimately, if you could get a Harry Kane, if you're United, if it's not overpriced, then you probably do. But the guy that I had, I'd expect to get for a fair bit cheaper than Harry Kane. Although, when I say cheaper, I'd still expect Eintracht Frankfurt to command a fee on him. But once I saw Randall Koulibaly as part of that front four at United, I couldn't unsee it. Because Ten Hag plays with that diamond where he expects players to be kind of fluent in their positions and fill in different positions, like in the press. So I think he loves that Rashford can fill in through the middle, but can also go to the left. Randall Koulibaly is almost the ultimate player at doing this. He gets the numbers of a striker, but he gets the numbers of a winger, and that is showing when he's reached double figures in goals and assists in the Bundesliga this season. If a winger makes a run from out to in, he's more than happy to go and fill in at right or left midfield against the ball. And I think Ten Hag will love that because he loves that fluid diamond up front. And I just think once I saw that this guy's traits fit that system so well, I couldn't unsee it. So I think for the fact that he is attainable for Manchester United, he should be. And for the fact that he's such a good tactical fit, or he seems to be for Ten Hag, I'm gonna put Koulibaly as my number one for United. But we chose the same position pretty much.
But yeah, but he's not a centre forward.
Well, he is. He plays as a number 9, but he's sort of very fluid in that position, especially without the ball.
I still think,
and he did. I think he's the starting centre forward for France going forward as well. So
Really?
you're getting yourself a French into that. Well, he started against the Netherlands, and Karim Benzema and Didier Deschamps have had their falling out. So and Mbappe doesn't want to play centre forward, so he wants to play left wing. So yeah, I think it will be Koulibaly, and he was quite good in the game against the Dutch.
Yeah, well, yeah, we agree on the position at least.
Yeah, I think you also could have looked at the midfielder next to Casemiro.
Yeah,
I know, and it'll be interesting to see how Eriksen comes back as well. But even before he got injured, I still think there were holes to expose with Eriksen. So yeah, you could have looked at that position as well.
Yeah, but that was another position that I was thinking about, but I think that this one's a more important one to fill.
Yeah, I agree. So
Who
with
who's next for you? What team?
the aforementioned Tottenham Hotspur, because I did in order of the table.
See,
This one, yeah, this one was hard.
I went for two players that I don't want. I don't want there at all. But this isn't about what my heart wants. This is about this is like what that team should go for, should prioritize.
This is objective podcaster dev.
Yeah, and you basically mentioned that you sort of alluded to two positions or one position that they haven't had since Vertonghen and Alderweireld left, and that's all. There's the centre back position, and there's also the goalkeeper position as well.
Yep, I had goalkeeper.
See, okay, would Mike Mignon actually go to Tottenham?
No way.
I don't think he
hold
would.
out for a bigger club.
With the goalkeeper position, I went with Dominik Livakovic.
Left field, the Croatian. This isn't quite objective podcaster dev.
Well, just thinking about it, he's the number one goalkeeper for Croatia. He had a tremendous World Cup, and a lot of you could argue that he should have been goalkeeper of the tournament as well. And I think and he can actually save penalties. And I think he would be fantastic for Tottenham. But that was actually the second position. The number one position was centre back, and I think that Guardiola should be their number one priority, or a player like Guardiola. But again, yeah, he's not going to go to Tottenham, especially when you have teams like considering he's probably like one of the hottest prospects in the centre back position. He can basically have his pick of the clubs, and if Tottenham wanted him, they should have signed him directly from Dinamo Zagreb, the same way they signed Modric directly from there.
Okay, so Livakovic is a tough one because I don't get to watch him at his club week in, week out. So, it's a little bit of a tough one to back him. But I also went goalkeeper as my number one. I went goalkeeper as number one because I think this player is more achievable than to borrow an NBA term, a franchise-changing centre-back. But I do also have a centre-back on the list. But my goalkeeper that I think Tottenham should go for is a newly commemorated his good form by getting into the Italy squad. Didn't start because Mancini went with Donnarumma. That's a totally different story because there were two better goalkeepers on the bench. And one of them is Ivan Provedel, who I think has been fantastic for Lazio. Now, Lazio have a really good chance of finishing top four. So it depends on his ambitions. Does he want the Premier League pay packet and a good club like Tottenham Hotspur? Or does he want to stay in Lazio? That is a question. But I think this guy has been so good for Lazio this season, as I say now in the Italy squad. And for all intents and purposes, better than Donnarumma this season. A clear upgrade on Lloris, who is, I think we all agree, past it. Obviously, it means kind of sending a message that we're changing from what we've had because Lloris is their captain. So you'd expect he would no longer be at the club. I think he'd be fine with that. He might go back to France. So, yeah, for that reason, I think you could get a genuinely good player. The problem is he's nearing 30. But goalkeepers can peak for... You'd still think he'd have 5, 6, 7 really good seasons as a goalkeeper, really. So he was the number one. The number two in the centre-back position. More attainable than Guardiola, who I had somewhere else. I think maybe you could look at Pau Torres from Villarreal. Obviously, normally a Spanish regular. Maybe a little bit injury prone over.
Is he a left or right sided centre back?
Left.
Yeah, because
so
they have
Romero.
That's why I was thinking Guardiola, like as a franchise type signing.
Yeah, he would be franchise changing, you'd think. But yeah, Pau Torres, and then a few other names like Dani Parejo if you're looking for an instant stopgap into that. Sort of someone who can pass the ball in that midfield. And if you want to spend a lot of money, maybe to address some creative problems in midfield, maybe a Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen, but I'd expect he would command Kai Havertz kind of money as that attacking midfielder, maybe 70 million. So, but he is an exceptional talent. He's just come back from a long layoff and looking very good for Leverkusen. I hope he doesn't move from Leverkusen. I hope Leverkusen builds something with Xabi Alonso there. But if you're looking to pick off clubs from around Europe, Leverkusen have to be... Well, if Leverkusen win the Europa League and qualify for Champions League, maybe they're not there to be picked off. But as it stands, you'd think they will be there to be picked off. And he would be one that would address a lot of creative problems in midfield for sure. But yeah, I think Providel and Pau Torres were my 1 and 2 for Tottenham.
At least we've same.
We've agreed on positions. Every position for every club so far.
Yeah, so far being correct. I think that's gonna.
Did you do Newcastle?
No, I didn't do Newcastle.
Oh, see, Newcastle are interesting to me. They're a little bit under the radar.
See, that's the thing. Like Newcastle, I don't know what. I think the glaring position is centre forward. I think for them, I'd say it is.
Callum Wilson was good at the start of the season.
I know he's
Isak
good.
Has been good lately since he came back. So I think eventually it will be, but they're not at that level where I think they should look at us. I think those two, for the level they're at, are quite good, to be quite honest.
I just think if you look at their record this season, they have the best defensive record in the league. They just have, and they have like 10 draws or something. Like if they had a striker that would have scored in at least like 4 of them, like just 1 goal, like in 4 of the games. So that's not even 50% of the games. Like they could have been, like they could have secured or like pretty much top 4.
Well, I mean, if they could get a Randall Koulibaly, then I would say maybe he would be number 1. I think he can go to bigger clubs. It'll be interesting. What view do players have of Newcastle if they do finish top 4? Does a player like Randall Koulibaly get attracted to Newcastle if they do finish top 4? That is an interesting question for the future. But for as it sits right now, I think some attainable players, and I think it's a little. I didn't address the front areas just because I think for them to get a game changer, they need to. Like I say, they need to be seen by players to be an attractive destination. I don't know if they're quite there yet. So I think if you're looking at forward players for Newcastle, I think the best you can do is an Alexander Isak at the moment. Maybe a Rasmus Højlund, but he's young and unproven from Atalanta. So for that reason, I didn't go for those positions. I went for sort of a central midfield position. I went for my boy Koopmeiners from Atalanta as number 1. I think he gives you a bit more thrust going forward, but will fit in nicely with Newcastle wanting to be still a physical team, still a pressing team, not lose that identity. The second player I put in there for more creative reasons was Canales from Real Betis. Again, he's 30 years old, so he's a bit more instant. But if you do have a Champions League campaign coming up, he's good added experience in that position. And is a very good player and is Betis' best player this season. And finally, I had Destiny Udogie from Udinese, who might be a bit under the radar. He's a left wing back, big and physical, quick as well, good going forward. Problem is, it'll be not only an adjustment, and he's only, I think, 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. It'll be an adjustment for him, A, coming to the Premier League, but B, playing as one of a back 4. But Dan Burn has been pretty serviceable this season, so if you have to lean on him for a lot of games again, I don't think that's a problem. So I didn't put unrealistic like Newcastle, like, oh, they got all this Saudi money, they could go and get Victor Osimhen or something like that. I didn't go crazy like that. So I looked for maybe a bit more underground, but I think players like that will just continue them along their trajectory. They're in a tough position, but I think the signs have been promising, and if they can finish the job this season, they might put themselves in a different stratosphere in terms of if they can finish in the Champions League and just attract different players. So that was an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm not. I still think that the centre forward position is the most glaring one for them.
That's fair. If they could get a quality centre forward, then I'm all for it. I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
But I just don't know if they can.
And to your point in terms of like realistic signings and stuff, they've also shown that that's not their policy. Like as opposed to, for instance, City, like they brought in Robinho, like as like their marquee signing. Like Newcastle aren't going down that same route so far, at least, of bringing in like these marquee signings, these big names, and they're being very smart and cautious about it. However, I think when Robinho came in, I don't think financial fair play was brought in just yet, or like it was sort of being written up at that time.
I think they only paid 32 million for him as well. So back then it was a lot of money. But
back then it was a lot of money.
Now we're looking at that. That gets you no one.
Yeah, that gets you like a 20-year-old prospect, pretty much.
Or it gets you I think it got us a 30-whatever-year-old Thiago when we got him from Bayern. I think he was around 30, 35.
Yeah.
But I think he only had a year on his contract. So that's what that gets you now.
Yeah.
Mane went to Bayern, I think, for around the same as well.
Yeah, that too. What club do you have? Well, Liverpool. How about that?
Well, what do you have next?
Well, let's go for Liverpool since we're sort of on that.
Yeah,
Liverpool.
I'm interested.
Well, look, I think that one's pretty obvious. It's got to be Bellingham.
Yeah, but I think you're living in a dreamland if we're getting him outside of the top four. I didn't put him on the list for that reason.
Well, I've said that if Liverpool can't get into the top four, they need to pay the Champions League tax, which is like an extra 15,000, 20,000 a week on the wages.
Nah. I don't think Jude Bellingham plays for that reason, especially when he gets to the level of money he already probably is at.
Yeah.
And what he can get from any other club in the world. I don't think that will be enough to persuade him not to play Champions League.
I've mentioned in the past, Guardiola as well should be a high priority target. And then I also have Declan Rice as well, if you can't get Bellingham, because I think he will be cheaper.
I do like the Declan Rice pick if we could possibly get him. I don't mind the Guardiola pick, although...
That's similar to Bellingham, though, where it's going to be like a franchise type signing and it's going to break the bank.
Yeah, but I see that one more possible because I think the Bellingham talk is far more competitive than the Guardiola talk at the moment. Although the Guardiola talk will be competitive, but I don't think it'll be Bellingham level. But I think... what was I going to say? Yeah, the Rice one. The Rice one I like because he's obviously bolsters the midfield. You give up on Fabinho with that one. The centre-backs with Guardiola... I'm interested. Who is Guardiola the replacement for out of our centre-backs?
I've said it. Move Van Dijk over to the right-hand side.
Yeah. I would have been... You had an opportunity for a hot take there and say he's the replacement for Van Dijk. Because man, oh man, we need to see something more from Van Dijk. He wasn't good for the Dutch either, so... That's an interesting one. Because Konate was a French starter as well against the Dutch, so... And when he can play, he is very good, Ibrahima Konate. The problem is when can he play? It's not often enough at the moment. So the Guardiola's interesting one for that one. Can you trust the health? Maybe, maybe not. But if we do have Van Dijk and Konate, I don't see that as a key position. But the names I came up with, and this is probably my pessimism and the fact that I don't think we're going to finish in the top four. But I was coming up with your Mikel Marinos from Sociedad, Benjamin Pavard, I've already floated that one. But that is only if Klopp is willing to finally put Trent into midfield and start trying him out there. I had Koopmeiners again, doubling up. And I had Frank Kessie from Barcelona, but staying on Barcelona. So a lot of central midfielders, obviously. Frank Kessie's wages might take him out of Liverpool running. All right, I want to put a spicy one in there because of what has just happened with the Barcelona legal ruling. Gavi now has to go back to being registered as a youth player.
Yeah.
And part of his contract said that he must be registered as a senior player, otherwise he can leave for a free. So now Gavi is potentially on the market for a free this summer. I know bigger clubs than Liverpool will probably be sniffing. I don't know the ins and outs, but that's the basic. You need to read the article, I think, on The Athletic about it.
Okay.
If you could get access to it. But that's the basic gist of it. I don't think Gavi will leave
I don't
Barcelona.
think
Let me make
either.
that clear. But it's your due diligence as Liverpool to sniff around because he is maybe the ideal Liverpool midfielder for what he does in the press and the counter press. And the fact that he's only, 19, 20 years old, he would have an instant impact at Liverpool. So you have to do your job properly and at least sniff around that one. But yeah, that's my spicy out of left field one.
That one caught me off guard a little bit, just because I haven't seen that news regarding the contract situation. But I guess
That
it's
was
it might even be something similar to what happened to Thiago because he. Oh no, but Thiago had like a really low release clause. I think it was similar to Haaland, where like the release clause dropped in his final year. Because didn't he end up leaving to Bayern for like 20 mil or something?
Thiago from Barca.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
I
remember
remember.
that
I
one.
remember it
But
was
Thiago,
super cheap. It was super
I
cheap.
never, I never felt like Thiago was a huge part of that Barcelona team anyway, to be quite honest.
Well, he was
So I
meant
didn't make a
to.
big deal of it
I
when he
guess he was
moved to
meant to
Bayern.
like be the successor to like Xavi or Iniesta.
Yeah, nah, he's different. He's different from those two for sure. For me,
Different,
not
but
quite the
yeah,
same.
he was meant to be the successor from memory. But yeah, I remember him. I think it was similar to Haaland, where like in the last year of his contract, it drops down, and I think it was also because it was to do with his age as well, because I think he left as like what a 21-year-old or a 22-year-old to Bayern. So I think it was also because of that. So it might have been a similar situation to that, where like it's because he's a like considered a youth type player slash senior. So the contract sort of changes.
I don't know the ins and outs. You have to read but you've got to sniff around. You got to do your work and sniff
Yeah.
around that one. Was
Um.
uh was Chelsea the last club you had from the Premier League?
Yeah, that was the last one. I think that one's pretty glaring, and that's centre forward once again.
Did you have
And
Victor Osimhen?
I went
Is
with
this your
Osimhen.
Osimhen corner? You listened to me, but I didn't have
But I
Osimhen.
have Osimhen to two other clubs.
Yeah, of course, as you should. But yeah, I wasn't very excited by the Chelsea thought, and that's probably because I don't know what kind of business they're doing in the summer after they've
Well,
already done so much business.
they've sort of completed the team. I feel, and
Yeah,
it was only the striker position that was left.
if you could get Victor Osimhen, you get Victor Osimhen if you're Chelsea. I'm not suggesting that you don't by not having him number one on the list. But the only player I came up with on the list, who will be another huge signing if you could get him, but I'm probably scared off from Chelsea going after centre forwards after their recent history. So I came up with a different solution. Given that they'll get Christopher and Kuku, given that they'll have all these sort of false nines who could do that job but could create, I went with Rafael Leao as if Chelsea could get Rafael Leao, I think he's kind of a striker, but he plays on the left wing. Doesn't do all that much defensive work, but that's okay because I think Chelsea could get a system around him. And I think he makes Chelsea scary, which isn't in that traditional physical centre forward way, but it's with that physical sort of left wing driving runs, gaining so much ground. If he can add more goals to his game, then he already is such a scary prospect for the speed and strength alone. If you can add more goals, then we're talking about world class. So if you could get him, you get him. If you could get Victor Osimhen, you get Victor Osimhen. But Chelsea, I wasn't excited yet because again, I don't know how much business they're doing in summer, so
Yeah,
I didn't want to go too out there.
it feels like they've done quite a lot. And also, I think the latest news is that because of the when like around the Roman Abramovich sanctions and whatnot, they've lost like 100 mil in revenue or something. Apparently from like
Yeah,
match day
maybe.
tickets and all this other stuff. So they might be on the verge of breaching FFP. Apparently, that's the
We'll
latest
see.
news at least. So they might not be signing anyone.
Yeah, maybe their players will be available for freeze as well. Need to sniff around.
Yeah.
Uh, did you want to go to Spain next?
Let's actually do let's do France. Let's knock that one out of the park. That's I only
Only
have
at
PSG.
PSG.
Yeah, PSG. And I've mentioned previously who I think that they need, and that's I believe that they need either Kovacic or Conte. I know they're already like 29, 30, but though one of those two players is what that midfield needs. I think it would just wrap it up. And I guess the other problem with one of those two signings is that they're pretty injury prone. So that's the only problem there. But they need
Well,
a player like one of those.
you actually know why I love, and it's the Conte one more than the Kovacic one for me that I think is more vital, especially with the French connection. But you know what I loved about that one was I'll never say I'll see being injury prone as a positive, but for the fact that you're going to PSG where they expect to win the league without trying, how many games does N'Golo Conte need to be fit for? As many Champions League games as you could get him fit for. That's all that matters. And if he could be fit enough to be playing at them at a high percentage of what he could do, then you're fine, and you can load manage on him and make sure you're not overworking him, and he doesn't need to be overworked because it's just League Good. So I think you convinced me with the Conte one. I think that one makes more sense than the one I had. I actually had Brian Cristante from Roma because it's not a flash signing. It's not sending the message that we're the old PSG and we're spending on these players who play in forward areas. But I think he's one of those midfielders who's really good as a one-man midfield. He's a presence in there. He does the job of more than just one player in there. He's adept at playing as one of a two for Roma, which Mourinho asked him to do all the time. He mops up so much. He shields so much. And again, he's a presence in there. And I think PSG have been sorely lacking that this season, as we've seen in their Champions League performances. I know Danilo can do that, but he's more of a centre back nowadays. But I think we both picked the same position. It was pretty obvious with PSG. But yeah, I think you convinced me that the Conte one makes more sense. It might not be a better signing, but it makes more sense for sure.
Yeah, but I think also, I know Conte is probably Conte is a little bit more energetic and a little bit more defensive as well. But I think Kovacic would be a massive help to that midfield as well.
If you get both.
Or if you can get both, yeah.
Perfect.
Um,
So we didn't have any other French clubs, of course. So did you want to go, if we do France, do you want to do Germany then?
Yeah.
Kind of always makes sense.
I don't watch Dortmund enough to really have a say on who they need. But for Bayern, I've gone for Osimhen or Kane.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what they need. A striker. I went Harry Kane.
Yeah.
I
was thinking defender, as a replacement for Upamecano, but I was like, no, I'm gonna stick with the forward position because that's the most glaring one after Lewandowski left.
Your boy Guardiola would be a good defender, given that they always steal talent from Germany anyway.
Yeah, and move De Ligt. De Ligt probably plays a little bit more on. He plays as a left centre back at the moment, so you move him over to the right.
I'll tell you what, that's a pretty good centre-back partnership, especially if now you've got Upamecano as a third choice. And that's so young as well. It's only, 24 or whatever?
24, I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be very tasty. It's almost convinced me, but it is centre-forward. And it is those two names. Because you're Bayern Munich, you expect the best. I think Harry Kane is a more instantaneous fit, especially because he can provide for those wingers that Bayern have. Probably better than Osimhen, but Osimhen's link-up play has been fantastic this season. Him and Kvaratskhelia have been wonderful. It's one of those two. And I think it makes more sense for Harry Kane to go to Bayern because Bayern are guaranteed a trophy every year. And although they're not guaranteed it this year, and that's going to be fun to watch. But
the only thing, though, with Harry Kane to outside the Premier League is that it then means that he can't get the record. And he's is he 60 goals behind Shearer?
It's still a shitload of goals. Alan Shearer did quite well.
But I know, but And
He can do it, though.
he did it for Newcastle as well. And I know Newcastle during the 90s at least they were challenging a couple of those years for the title. But had he have gone to United, that probably would have been 300 goals. You imagine?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah. But Kane, he's 60 goals behind. If he stays on the current trajectory, it's only 3 more seasons of 20 goals a season.
You'd think he'd drop off a little bit, but yeah, no signs yet.
Minimum three more seasons.
It'll be interesting to see what motivates Harry Kane in the summer. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think Osimhen or Kane should be number 1 targets.
I agree, and I had some for Dortmund. I think they need an upgrade on Emre Can. I'm not a big fan on Emre Can, and he's too important in the way that Dortmund play at the moment now. He's been good enough so far, but I think if they could somehow get a João Paulinho from Fulham, he might cost a bit because of the Premier League tax, but for him, I think for João Paulinho, that's an upgrade, and for Dortmund, you're getting a player who probably has potential to be world class. I think he's been that good in the Premier League this season, so if they could somehow go for him, but if not him, maybe a Robert Andrich from Leverkusen, same position. He's a lot older. Actually, I'm not sure how old Paulinho is. I think he's younger than Andrich. Andrich is 28, but so he's not a long-term solution, but I do think he is better than Emre Can. Yeah, Dortmund are quite good. Another position you could look at is centre-back, but I don't think there's good enough centre-backs out there for a Dortmund to get for me to say that they should be looking at centre-back. So for now, that we'll bear having Nico Schlotterbeck at the back, and he'll make his mistakes, but he'll do some decent things as well. He's a bit Upamecano-like in that. Like, he'll do some good defending a lot of the time,
sticking.
but then he'll do some bad defending sometimes. But yeah, I didn't even have anything for Leipzig. Leipzig, I worry about. I don't know what they're going to do in the summer. They'll just bring in their players from Salzburg.
They're more of a feeder club. Like once they've created the star player.
So I guess that leaves. Where do you want to go first, Italy or Spain?
Spain, because I think Italy there's 5 teams, 6 teams.
Yeah, and Italy's
a
hard.
Spain there's only really 3.
Yeah, I only had 3. So you want to start with the to-be champions-elect, Barcelona.
You know what? With Barcelona, I've gone with Guardiola, centre-back. Pair him up with Araujo. I don't think the forward positions are necessarily glaring. I think you still have Lewandowski for another 2-3 seasons. You have Dembele there as well. You have Ferran Torres. I know he's not, a mega star or whatever, but I think there's you have Rafinha as well. I think you have ample players, but glaringly at midfield as well. I don't think that's necessarily an urgent position to fill. Like Busquets leaves, you bring De Jong in. So yeah, I think you can't. I don't think you can hang your hat on Christensen and. I always forget the other one.
Marcos Alonso.
I either name one or and then I forget the other. Balde is sufficient replacement for Jordi Alba for the future. So yeah, I think centre back. I think Guardiola. They have the prestige. They have the money to go out and get him.
Yeah, I thought a little bit differently about this one because I'm still maybe hoping foolishly that Xavi sees that his best centre-back partnership is actually Jules Koundé and Ronald Araujo, even though Jules Koundé is an able right-back. But so for that reason, I did have 2 right-backs on the list. They were low down on the list, but I had Van der Sar from Monaco, who sometimes plays right midfield, so that's a little worrying. You'd have to change the way you play. He'd be more in the Dani Alves sort of role. I don't want to be sacrilegious and say he'd be Dani Alves, but he'd be more in that role. Young Brazilian as well, so who knows? Maybe. He's impressed me. I don't think he'd be too expensive. Another one as well with the French connections in the squad, Benjamin Pavard, who has seemingly wanted away from Bayern. I think his flexibility as well to play right back or centre back would be good for Xavi. But like I say, those two were the lowest on the list. I was actually focusing in the front areas myself because
You know what? Just
when I
before
watched,
you go on,
yeah,
also a note on Pavard. He knows what winning at the Camp Nou is like. So he.
very good. Didn't he score? I think he scored as well
I
in
think he
that
might
game.
have. Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually looking at the front areas because when I watch Barcelona, they're not threatening enough to me. I don't think they
I
have
agree
enough
with that.
threat. Yeah, so I wanted someone who could change the pace of Barcelona a little bit, and target number one for me was Rafael Leao. If they could get Rafael Leao, their whole attack changes. Now, maybe Xavi doesn't like his work against the ball because it's not great, but I think the threat he gives you instantly pushes an opponent back 10 yards. They don't want to leave any space for that guy to get in behind. So instantly, I think Lewandowski's job becomes easier. I think even Rafinha on the other side and Gavi and Pedri's ability to control the game in midfield. I think just having more of a threat, more of a dynamic threat in the front area just makes everyone's job easier. I'm not breaking ground in saying that. That's why the best teams in the world are the best teams in the world because they have those kinds of threats up front. So he would be target number one if they can afford him, obviously, because Barcelona might have to pull a few levers again. But if they can't, I was looking a little bit further down the tree. I was looking at Matoma from Brighton. I think, again, another
Oh
dynamic
yeah,
player.
he would be
Yeah,
excellent.
outside the box a little bit. I think he could have his head turned by a Barcelona move. He wouldn't be cheap, obviously, but I think I think you could prize him away. And the other one was also Nico Williams from Bilbao, a dynamic player, a little bit raw. I don't expect him to make the difference straight away, but he instantly gives you that pace, that dynamism. I think he's a little bit like Ousmane Dembele on the other side, but the fact that he's so much younger makes me believe that he can flourish into maybe a more productive Ousmane Dembele, which if you could ever have gotten Ousmane Dembele to be productive and to find the right pass more often than not, then we'd be talking about a world-class player right there
Well,
because some
didn't
of the things he does are unbelievable, to be fair.
didn't someone come out recently and say that Dembele is a better player than Mbappe?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't begrudge that. He's so two-footed, he's so quick, he has such good control, but he lets himself down with that end product so many
Yeah.
times.
You know when I watch him play, like I sort of feel like I've mentioned this in the past. I think with some other player, but it sort of feels like he's playing with a little bit of fear in his mind, and I think that might be the accumulation of injuries because, and that probably I think I mentioned it with Lakonga that the reason why he keeps on making the wrong decisions is because he has that fear in the back of his head, and that stops him, and that makes his touch a little bit too heavy, or it makes him overthink things and overcomplicate things. And yeah, like seeing Dembele, he has all the attributes to be a world beater. But yeah, I think just that fear and him always being injured has
Yeah,
sort of killed that, and it's installed that fear in him.
yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if that theory hits pretty close to
Yeah.
home.
Well, I know. Like just touching on myself, like I broke my collarbone when I was 13, and like that season, like I spent like a whole season of like being a little bit scared or a little bit timid of like just going in for a shoulder bump on people,
Yeah,
just because I broke that left collarbone, and it was only until the season after where I sort of started to like actually become a little bit more physical and not being as scared to use my body. So if and like yeah, Dembele, he's injured now, isn't he?
yeah.
So like I think last season he spent like the entire season on the injury table. Like so yeah, like it's a shame, really about that.
Yeah, still a good player, whatever.
Yeah,
But with Real Madrid, this one, did you find this one a bit tough?
a little bit, yeah. Um,
Who did you end up going for?
you know what? And I hopefully you don't crucify me for this, but I did go for a replacement for Benzema. because
Yeah,
Benzema's
he has.
is he turning or is he turned 35 this year? I think he's turning
Oh,
35.
yeah, that sounds about right.
So I've gone for the most obvious centre forward in Osimhen.
Awesome, man.
I think if
You
you're
think?
gonna go for anyone to like, I think Kane is a little bit too old. Like based on the way that they seem to be signing players, I think Osimhen would be perfect. Like he would perfectly fit in with like what they have with Vinny, with Valverde, with Rodrigo, with Camavinga, with Tchouaméni. Perfect. But then, for instance, you also have someone like Guardiola, who Real Madrid are more than ample suitors for. And I know that Modric, I don't know what his decision is going to be for next season, because I think he might just be signing like a year extension every year, just based on how he feels. But if he stays for another year, I can see them going for him just because of that Croatian connection.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think both kind of fit the bill. Although
I don't think any
I
position's
get the.
necessarily glaring for me.
I thought left back is a little bit glaring. I've never been a big Furlan Mendy fan, and then David Alba's getting up in years, so great when he's available, but he hasn't been available for a while. I didn't go left back number one, but my left back was Tio. Bring him home. Could they bring Tio Hernandez back home to the Bernabeu? I think that would be a great signing for them. On the Osimhen point, I don't quite get I didn't have Osimhen as number one because I think Osimhen's goal is to play in the Premier League, and he feels like a Premier League player to me. And I think if Real Madrid are going to make a move like that, they're going to wait to get Kylian Mbappe. I don't think they're going to. They're going to blow all that money on Victor Osimhen because Napoli are not going to sell him cheap.
Yeah,
There's no way.
I was gonna go for Mbappe, but it's like, what do you do with Vinny
Obvious.
then? Huh?
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah, like what do you do with him? Like, do you move Vinny over to the right hand side? Do you move Mbappe to the right hand side? Mbappe said he doesn't want to play through the middle, so what do you do?
Yeah, and that's a question that they're going to have to answer when they get Mbappe.
Do you play with
when
two
it
left
is.
wingers? Just put two people there.
Well, when they're those two guys, then maybe it will work. It's scary enough. Imagine that poor right back.
It's the new football meta. Just put two people in the exact same position. Imagine Trent having to deal with both.
I was just gonna say, imagine Trent, and then imagine if they have Tio Hernandez behind them. Just all three. It's like, nah, I'd quit. If I was a right back, I'd quit.
Just the Xabi Alonso seeing Co's at training.
That meme, that's great. I didn't go as glamorous because I figured that if Real Madrid can't get Mbappe this summer, then they'll save their pennies until they can. So I went with a player who's maybe a bit more functional, but I went with Bernardo Silva as the number one for Real Madrid. I think he's a little bit younger than most of their midfielders at the moment. He's more flexible. He can play on that right-hand side, which I'm not... How do we feel about Rodrigo? Are we convinced that he's the way forward for Real Madrid? I'm not there yet.
He hasn't hit the ground running like Vinny.
I guess it could be Valverde as the right winger.
Yeah,
but I always thought he would eventually just become the central midfielder. But Bernardo Silva gives you that flexibility. I don't think he'd be ultra expensive given the age. He already had his
a year left, doesn't he?
Yeah, he already had his head turned by Spain with all that Barcelona talk in the summer. So I'm sure if another Spanish club comes in, I'm sure he'll have his head turned again. And I'm sure City will let him go this time if it actually happens. So, yeah, not the most glamorous, but I went with him. And my last name was, because I'm not convinced Rodrigo is the way forward, I stuck in a cheeky Leroy Sané in there, who doesn't seem to play week in, week out at Bayern. Although at the start of the season he was pretty excellent. I think he kind of would slot into that sort of right winger mould and link up well with the players that they have. But yeah, that was my third choice. Behind number one was Bernardo, and number two was Tio.
What about Salah?
I did think Salah, but I thought maybe I think Sane, given his technical qualities, fits in a bit better than Salah
And
would
he's
with
younger as
those.
well.
Yeah, and he's younger as
But
well.
I don't think he's
Exactly.
awfully younger. He's probably like 2 or 3 years younger.
Yeah, I think he's still the right. I'm pretty sure he's still the right side of 30.
Yeah, I'd say
Quite
so.
young when he burst into C, but yeah, he should be
I
about
will double
peaking.
check that.
And I assume you had Atletico as well.
I couldn't really. I don't look. I think I told you before. I don't really watch them enough to suggest a player, so I'm gonna leave that one up to you.
You know who my Atletico player is. I've already said this one on the pod. It's your boy.
My boy. Oh, Guardiola.
Yeah, Guardiola. I think that's the move made in heaven for me. It's like my Kolo Muani one. Once I saw it, I can't unsee it. And I think Atletico have a need to replace Stefan Savage and put someone next to Jimenez.
Oh yeah, hang on.
Yeah.
I just typed in Leroy Sané transfer news. Real Madrid keen on Leroy Sané.
Oh no, they hurt me. I promise I didn't see that when I came up with it.
Yeah, and he's 27.
Yeah, I thought he'd be around, so he is peaking. But yeah, Guardiola for Atleti. I think him working with Simeone just makes sense to me, and the fact that he's only 22 means, or 21, I think he might even be younger, means that he doesn't need to stay at Atleti for the rest of his career. He can learn what he needs to learn from Simeone, and then take it somewhere else. And Atleti, like I keep saying, for the last 2 or 3 months. Ever since the World Cup break, they've been, for me, the best team in Spain. Now, you could argue with me that Barca and Real have been just as good. Fine, that's fine. But you can't tell me that those two have been better than Atletico Madrid. So, yeah, I think Atleti aren't as dire as they were at the start of the season. And I think, yeah, Guardiola might be able to move to bigger clubs, but Atleti are a big club. They should be in Champions League next season. In the grand scheme of things, they do work with a world-class manager. Say what you want about Diego Simeone. For me, he's proving that he can still be at that level. And yeah, he's a perfect defender's coach and perfect for what Guardiola needs, which I think is that discipline and that ability to be the number one defender, because at times he's still a little rash. His positioning still isn't perfect. So if he could just learn to... I know he wants to defend progressively, and everyone wants their defenders to be progressive, but if he can learn to defend in mid and low blocks, I think that'll be great for his progression as a defender. So, yeah, for me, Atleti is the one. It just makes sense for me. I think the Atleti fans would love him as well. So, that for me is a match made in heaven. I hope it happens.
Well,
If it's not Liverpool, obviously.
Yeah, well, if it means that he becomes an even better player and just levels him up, so that he can play better for Croatia, then yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, of
and
course.
Just speaking of, just while I'm on that point as well, like obviously Modric is towards the end of his career. He's probably the best Croatian player ever. Obviously, like I haven't watched. See, that's the thing. Like Croatia is such a young country now because it was Yugoslavia previously, but like there's obviously been previous players that played for Yugoslavia that were Croatian and whatnot that I can't speak of, because I never watched them. But obviously, he would go down as the best. I think Gvardiol potentially has that prospect of becoming. However, he's a defender, and defenders don't get as much shine as a forward or even a midfielder. So, but I think he could potentially become Croatia's best ever player if he goes on to have a similar career to Modric.
It depends. Well, in Croatia terms, it depends on the team that he has playing with him for Croatia. Because obviously Modric is going to retire. Kovacic is going to retire eventually. Brozovic is wrong side. Rakitic is already gone. So the next generation has to be good, has to be up to that level.
Yeah.
I think it will be very difficult for him to emulate the achievements that Luka Modric was the big part of.
That's the thing, like
as of those World Cup finishes.
Yeah, but also as a defender, like you don't have the influence that a midfielder can have on a game.
Yeah. You can have a huge influence, but yeah. I somewhat agree, but it's you need at least 2, 3, 4 very good to like world-class players to do something good, and Croatia have had that in this generation, and all in the midfield, obviously. So to emulate that will be huge. Maybe his Oh man, you're making the more I think of this, that is a huge call. I
All right,
what
well,
is,
like, all
oh,
right. So the thing
to
with
have
that is also
half the
like
career that Luka Modric has had,
that,
he's
but
got to be
that's
an excellent career.
but that's also the thing. Like, what can he stay? Can he join a club? If he joins Atletico, for instance, I don't think he can go to Real Madrid. And
Yeah,
what
that's
other
fair.
team? If he for instance stays at,
He's a Premier League defender for me.
but that's the thing.
Premier
Like,
League for
if
me.
he was to stay at a team for like 10 to 15 years, the same way Modric has been at Real Madrid for the last, I think, 11 or 12 years. What other team can win in a 10-year period 5 Champions Leagues?
Exactly. That's why I'm saying
But
to have half the career of Luka Modric is ridiculous.
exactly. So like the only one is really Real Madrid because it's in their DNA. So if he wants to win 5 Champions Leagues, he needs to join Real Madrid.
That is a good point. That is a good. So for your argument's sake, he can't go to Atleti. I don't think he can.
I don't think he can. Um,
He'll go to Barca.
yeah, but if he goes to Barca again, he can't go to Real Madrid. And I can see Real Madrid winning more Champions Leagues in the next 20 years than Barcelona.
So
Like,
they've had their dry spells. Barcelona, Real Madrid were very dry in the 80s and
but even so, like,
90s.
all right, look at, for instance, I know we're sort of getting, oh, at least we're finishing on Spain, but look at Barcelona.
Oh, we got Italy, bro.
I know, we're finishing on Spain, like,
Okay. Yeah, okay.
so Barcelona with the generation that they had with Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, Pedro, David Villa was in there as well. Henri was in there. I know Eto'o left after one season, and Henri I think left the season after Eto'o. But even so, like the generation of talent that they had, and they only won 2 under Pep and 1 under Enrique. So they won 3 in like.
You're not counting '06? Xavi did his cruise shit, so that's a bit
And
unfortunate.
Iniesta
But
was like a
part.
bit part. He was a bit part. Yeah,
a
and
bit
Messi
part.
also was a bit part player. But I'm not counting '06. I'm counting that domination period. So when they were dominating world football, they only won 3. Whereas Real Madrid, they were never dominating world football, not to the level that Barca was, and they won 5.
I think this is the point of the pod where, despite his indiscretions, or probably not that bad, but I don't know, his uneven performances in terms of off the pitch stuff in recent months. This is where we say, my God, how good was Cristiano Ronaldo? Oh, he was the main part of the team that went 3 in a row, back to back. As much as we want to shit on him because of the way his career is seemingly ending, God, we got to give that man props. It's probably the greatest club career ever. It probably is. Considering he won one with Manchester United as the main guy before he went to Real Madrid, that's nuts to think as itself. He emulates the greats like Cruyff and Beckenbauer by winning 3 in a row. In the modern era, the first one to do. Even go back to back in the Champions League. Obviously had that one under Ancelotti, which was my favourite Real Madrid team. I think the three-peat Real Madrid team was helped out by the fact that no other team around Europe was really competing. Even though in their own league they wouldn't win it each year, because I guess Barca was still there or thereabouts. But yeah, I thought winning that one in 14, when you think of how good some of the teams around it, like Barca, Bayern, those teams, Atleti, were all exceptional back then. But yeah, what a club career. Maybe the best ever. I think that wraps a bow on Spain, though.
Yeah, but that's to my point. Like, it's in Real
I
Madrid's
know.
DNA. So if Guardiola wants to win 5, he needs to go to Madrid, Real Madrid, not Atletico.
Yeah, they have that domination in them.
Yeah. All right, let's finish up with Italy. We're already 2 hours, so let's.
I know, crazy.
Yeah, let's get this one over and
This
done
was
with.
probably, to be fair, this was probably the least interesting. We'll start with the league.
Okay, hang on. Just before we get into it, like, yes, I think I mentioned it to you before. It's Napoli are similar to Arsenal, where they seem very complete, and you're not really sure who to really add to improve the team. Like obviously you can add like for instance like an Mbappe or someone like that, but like that's not
It's
realistic.
not going to happen.
Yeah, so like with and I don't watch enough Italian football to really comment on who they what these teams need. And like in all honesty, look, I have Napoli, AC, Juve, Inter, and I actually couldn't think. I don't watch enough of it to really have. I don't know who they really need for AC. I was trying to think of right backs and just so they could even up that side, so long as they're keeping a hold of like their players. But yeah, like you're gonna have to carry this segment essentially.
That's that's fine because I don't blame you for not having that many because I didn't have that many to go through. But for Napoli, I thought right wing. Given I would ideally like an upgrade on Rachmani next to Kim, but I don't think they can attract a Guardiola or someone like that. So I wasn't really
Wait,
thinking
you
about
say
centre backs.
right wing?
Yeah, right. Well, ultimately, I landed on right wing. I thought about centre back,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't think that they could get the kind of profile that's a huge upgrade. Maybe Lenormand from Sociedad is a bit of an upgrade on Rachmani, but Rachmani hasn't been terrible this season. How can you say anyone at Napoli has been terrible this season, to be fair? But I went for the right wing and I went Moussa Diaby from Leverkusen, who I think is 24, maybe 25 now. Explosive. An upgrade on Politano, even though he's done well. Definitely an upgrading on Lozano, who's a bit up and down. But he's done pretty well this season. But I think he's more in their price range, more in the realms of possibility. Signifies to Victor Osimhen that they're willing to strengthen and can maybe convince him to stay. But I think with Napoli, the big thing is trying to convince these players to stay rather than really looking to sign anyone. Maybe signing someone comes into that. And Moussa Diaby would make them more complete, would give them even more options, and would, if Napoli could continue on this trajectory, make them even more exciting. So he's one that I would look at for Napoli. Juve, I did put a spicy one in for Juve. I don't know how realistic it is, just because I don't know if he wants to keep playing at the top level of European football. But I went for Lionel Messi as number
Ooh.
one. I was like, would Messi get attracted by the Italian way of living? Would he get attracted by having Di Maria there and Paredes already at Juve? I know he likes those guys. Juve have a system that could accommodate Lionel Messi. He could play the Di Maria role. Maybe they could alternate given their ages, because Di Maria has been fantastic himself after the World Cup. He could play that creator, not have that big defensive responsibility in the 5-3-2. So I just put a spicy one, but if that fails, maybe a Danny Olmo from Leipzig might be an option in there. A bit younger than Di Maria and lightens the load on Di Maria because I think they need a somewhat replacement for Di Maria next
You know
season.
what though? Imagine the salt in the wound if Messi goes to Juve and wins the Champions League there.
For Cristiano.
Imagine that. Just
That would be good.
would that actually be the final nail in the coffin, or was the World Cup the final nail in the coffin?
I felt like the final nail in the coffin is whatever Messi decides it is. If he wants to win another Champions League and maybe can do that, then that will be the final nail. But right now it's the World Cup. Yeah, I don't know. I think he might go
Or
off
is
to America.
or would this be like the final nail is already in the coffin and then it's like one more for good measure, just to
He's
make it
dancing on the grave now.
No, he's actually pissing on the grave. He's not even dancing.
Yeah, disrespect. I didn't have anyone for Lazio because I'm just not sure of their position. I don't know what they'd attract. I know they could be a top four club. It'll probably be someone from around Italy. I was thinking maybe Jonathan Okone from Fiorentina, the French winger. He's impressed me every time I've seen him. But they do have pretty good wingers, but he might be somewhat an upgrade and somewhat a age sort of balancer because Felipe Anderson must be around 30. Jerome Mobile is not getting any younger. Zaccagni's pretty young, and they got a few options, but Lazio were a hard one to figure out, so I couldn't really get there with them. Inter, again, a pretty hard one to figure out. I went with Giorgio Scalvini from Atalanta to sort of regenerate their defence because we know they're losing Milan Skriniar. Scalvini's been pretty impressive in a back three at Atalanta, only 19? He might still be 18, actually. future Italian international. I'd be surprised if I think he was already in the squad actually for the recent round of fixtures. And then I had a couple of midfielders. I had Sanset again from Bilbao, and I had Dominic Soboslai from Leipzig, who I think those two midfielders need a lot of freedom, and Inter can give them freedom in a 5-3-2. But that also depends if Inter want to continue with the 5-3-2. Maybe they want to go a new manager. If they go a new manager, they're going to have to look to get some wingers in just to give the manager a different way of playing, because they have absolutely no width in front areas because they are married to a 5-3-2. So that might be something to look at for them. Maybe a Kone comes into their reckoning if that's something they want to do. Milan, I had a question mark because, again, I don't know if they'll be buyers or sellers. It depends if they finish top four. Depends if they could keep hold of their core as well. If they could keep hold of their core... Look, I had one pretty spicy one in here. I had Jeremy Frimpong from Leverkusen if they want to keep playing 3-4-3. He could be a good upgrade on the right wing-back position. And the spicy one I had as well, if they were going to keep playing 3-4-3, was maybe one Harry Maguire from Manchester United to come into the centre. Italian football is notoriously slower than the Premier League. Good for Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire, he is captain of Manchester United. Whether he deserves to be, I don't know, but he's held on to that position for a while, so he comes in with at least some sort of leadership, can play in between Tomori, who was obviously
English as well.
There'll be no communication issues there.
Yeah.
And Kalulu, who I think are both really good centre backs, but they just need someone who, and probably through his lack of physical gifts, needs to play this way, but someone who is stable in that position and just puts down the rock. I know Malik Tiar has been doing well in recent games, but we'll see if he progresses into what they need. But is Harry Maguire ever the answer? I don't know, but maybe for Milan he might be.
You make a good case. I sort of like this signing.
I try. I'm good. I landed a spicy one. I'm happy for that one.
Yeah, because you know what, like, and this is something that I was sort of thinking about, like, it's sort of regarding how Mesut Ozil retired, and like a lot of people got on his back and everything like that. But like, I don't think as viewers or as fans, I don't think we ever want players to do bad. Unless, like, that player is coming up against our team in a final, then we're like, oh, we hope he fucks up. But we don't want people to have unsuccessful careers and whatnot. We want them to be successful. And I know Harry Maguire's gotten a lot of stick. But I wouldn't be opposed to a redemption arc. And
the Renaissance in Italy, of course.
And maybe like this AC Milan move could like be that redemption story.
Yeah, it's definitely one that interested me, and it doesn't seem like Ten Hag's keen on Maguire, so he gets to go to another big club in Europe and continue his England.
What about him at Inter, because they're losing Skriniar?
That's a good call as well. I'm not opposed to that as well.
But he doesn't have an English centre back to help him with the language difference and whatnot. So yeah, I think AC Milan probably would make more sense just if Tomori stays.
Yeah. No, I expect him to. Maybe as well they could look at up front because Giroud's not getting younger.
Yeah, that's that too.
I didn't have one for Roma because I don't know what position they'll be in, much like Lazio. But for AC Milan, I know he hasn't had the best season, but Tammy Abraham might be a good replacement for Giroud if they could keep Leao, because you'd expect him to continue to score goals. So Tammy Abraham doesn't need to score all the goals, and he always shows a good attitude. I wish he'd score more goals this season for Roma, but he's been a bit in and out through injuries. And he's still young enough that I think it's more a blip this season than a sign of anything else. But he's a decent enough striker, and probably in the AC bracket. Yeah, I'm happy I landed the Maguire one. That's probably a good one to.
I think that might be. I think that might actually be like one of the best mentions out of all of the signings. I think that's the one that I like the most. Which is crazy. It's nuts. I think just like for one, because of the story, and two, the more I think about it now, I think it could actually work.
I do like imagining Harry Maguire in Italy. It's a good thought.
And you know what? Like with Abraham and Tamori, like and Smalling, like these English players have shown that they can play and be successful in Italy as well.
And you make a good point. If it's not Harry Maguire, Chris Smalling might be a good one for AC Milan as well. If they could get him on a free, if Roma don't re-up his contract,
Yeah,
and
that's
for all
another
the
one. And
same reasons as Harry
he's younger
Maguire,
as well,
and
isn't
he's
he?
already accustomed.
Or
Yeah, he
is he the
might.
same age?
I think they might be similar age. I think Smalling might be a bit older, but yeah, no, he's
Did
already
did
accustomed to
you
Italian football.
did you mention on the last pod Smalling to Arsenal could be a decent one for Saliba backup?
Yeah, yeah. I thought I
I
thought
think
he's
you
an
did.
upgrade on the backup you have.
Yeah, on holding. That could be an interesting one as well, but obviously we've already discussed Arsenal's
Chris,
priorities.
Chris Smalling, if you need representation, I'm here. Just give me a call. I'll float you out to some clubs in Europe who might want your services.
You know
It's like,
what?
have you thought about Chris Smalling?
We probably should have got into football agency because apparently it's like super easy. Like you just need to like finish one of those like weekly courses or something and just get accredited. Like you don't even need to
or
go to
you
like
just,
university or anything like that.
or you just need to be Harry Kane's brother,
That too, but
who
from
has
what
his
I've
own agency.
yeah, but from what I've heard, like to actually become like an accredited agent or like regulated or whatever it is, it's just like some super simple like online course, like just
Well, that's why you
that's
get
it.
dads and brothers being agents, isn't
Yeah,
it? I guess
maybe I should.
we're thinking about it, guys.
Yeah.
If there's no pod next week, it's because we're doing our football agency courses.
Well, you know what? I'm probably in a better position to become an agent. I don't know why I'm looking out the window, just because like I'm thinking of the
Looking
town
for the
that.
talent.
Yeah, I'm looking for the, where are they? But to your point, like to what you just said, like there's a lot more talent here in Croatia than what there is in Australia. So if
We have good players.
there's decent players, but
Just don't have pathways and coaching.
you know what
all
though?
that.
You know what? I up to a certain age, I think that the level is very similar or the same. I think when it starts to fall off, or the reason why it starts to fall off is probably a mentality difference. Where like you look at, for instance, like the poorer sort of nations like Croatia, Brazil, Argentina, et cetera, et cetera. But even if it's not a poorer nation like an Italy or a Spain or whatever, the players want to become a footballer. Like they have more of an urge to become a footballer, whereas like, you know, you reach 16, 17, 18 in Australia, it's like, whatever. Like it sort of drops off. Whereas like you reach that age here, and it's like, oh yeah, like I want to become a footballer. Like I think I'm gonna keep trying even more and even harder. And it's just that's I think that's where it starts to fall off at that age group.
More competitive.
Yeah, but it's probably also because they see there's a lot more opportunity as well. They even if they just play like second division, third division, like they can still be getting decent money. Whereas like in Australia, like playing second or first or second division, like you're not really getting decent money.
Yeah, the 2 hour 15 minute mark of the pod, we can't we could go for another 2 hours 15 if we open up this can of worms.
Yeah, true. Well, we always say that we're gonna like maybe dedicate like an extended period of time to these sort of topics, but we never do.
Yeah. This week would have been the one, but I'm happy with what we did with recommending signings for each club.
Yeah,
Maybe they should listen.
Hey, you know what? You know, I like you watch the French league more than me. I just thought of one that Newcastle could sign, Jonathan David.
Yeah. No, that's a good one.
That could be a good one.
I thought they might actually go for him when they went for Isak.
I don't know
Yeah,
what the reasoning behind that is. Maybe it was a contract thing, asking price thing. So who knows?
No, that's a good call.
Yeah, that could be a decent one. Like, if it does, so long as it doesn't break the bank. But yeah, I think that's a decent call. But it still doesn't top your Harry Maguire to AC Milan. Yeah. Anyway, Caleb, nothing more to add.
Nothing more.
Nothing more. Well, you know what? There's a big game. I don't know. I think there's two big games coming up this weekend that we will get into on the next pod. So to everyone that's stayed with us for the last almost 2.5 hours.
Also,
yeah.
Should we? Again, we'll give it away, especially if you've stayed with us for this long. But we're thinking next pod. Should we do the storylines we're looking forward to the most for the rest of the season? And we'll come up with a couple, and we'll just go through why. And I'm sure the Bundesliga title race will probably be one of them. So we'll touch on that. But yeah, we'll just look at the storylines in club football going ahead for the rest of the season that we're most looking forward to seeing their resolution.
Yeah, we can get into that. It can be a talking point. But yeah, the next pod, it'll be this week, for obvious reasons.
We have to do a preview.
Yeah, since there's going to be two big games. I'm not sure if there's any other big games.
There probably is, but we'll do it all. We'll cover it all.
Yeah, we need to check the fixture list. But yeah, for everyone that's stuck around for almost 2.5 hours, make sure you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Comment as well if you have any ideas for signings, whether you like the Harry Maguire AC Milan one as much as I do. And thanks for coming, and bye for now.